Okay, today's daf is daf lamed dal. We are going to begin by Tana Rabbanan. The line starts with Mishta Lamno. Before we start the daf, I just want to announce to all those here and all those watching that we have a few shiurim a day. Number one is in the morning we have 6:30 a shiur in Chassidus. We learn lamed dal. Lamed dal. In the morning, we learn Chassidus in the morning, 6:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 to 7, and then we have a 7:45, we have a Tanya shiur, a Chumash shiur, and then a Gemara shiur. So from basically 7:45 to 9 o'clock at night, Eastern Standard Time, will be the three shiurim. Okay. We're going to have now Tana Rabbanan another brisa that speaks about when a shade, the tashlumi nezek of a shade tam, when a shade tam damages. Tana Rabbanan we learned in a brisa. Shir shava masayim, shenogach shir shava masayim. If you have an ox, we're talking about an ox which is a tam, it's worth let's say $200. And this ox, which is a tam, which is worth $200, gored now another ox which is worth shava masayim, worth $200. Now, what happened? Now, ox number one made a damage to ox number two worth $50. Now, what happened? When they came to Beis Din and they appreciated the value, it appreciated in value, and it was worth now 400 dinars. It went up a lot. The whole evaluated a lot. So now, how much does he have to pay? He made a damage of 50. So he'll have to pay how much? 25. But when they evaluated it, the animal that was damaged was worth now $400. So, now, if ox number two, let's say, would never be damaged, and now he would be evaluated as 400 zuz. So what's the halacha? In the case of a shir tam, the halacha is noisin kishas nezek. He gives him only 25 dinars, which is chatzi nezek, according at the time of the value of the injury occurred, not the time when they assessed the damage.
There's no replacement value.
There's no meaning.
Like a insurance company, you do something, you got to replace it at accrued value.
Right.
Accrued value, that's
There's no replacement value, yeah. But here, so here the vart is that even though now, right,
replacement value.
Right. But here, even if there's, let's say, right. So here the vart is that we don't, how do we look at it? Do we look at it at the time that it damaged, and being that the time that it damaged was only worth 200, and he caused a damage of 50, so now he has to pay chatzi nezek of 25, or does he say that, listen, I don't owe you anything because now I made you a damage of 50. So your ox now, let's say, is only worth 150. But when you came to the insurance company, Beis Din, they valued at 400. So I don't owe you anything. No. We evaluate kishas hanezek at the time of the injury occurred. Now, that's if it went up in value. What happens if kochash? What if the injured ox now depreciated in value and is worth less than the time that it was injured? So, kishas ha'amadas badin, we evaluate it according to the ox worth at the time of standing in Beis Din. In other words, the owner of the tam must pay the difference between its value before it was injured and its current value. Shavach mazik, if the ox that caused the injury, now, from which the owner of the injured ox collects damages, now appreciated it in value, its owner gives the injured party a share of the ox according to the value at the time of the injury. Kochash, if it depreciated in value, so then kishas ha'amadas badin, he gives him according to the value at the time of the standing in Beis Din. Okay, Amar Mar, we learned this. In the first case of the second half of the brisa, we say that shavach mazik, if the ox that caused damage, this ox that caused damage now appreciated in value, So its owner gives the injured party a share according to the ox's value at the time of the injury. So where it says Mani, who does this go? Like Rabbi Shmuel, this is like Rabbi Shmuel, the Omar. Because Rabbi Shmuel is the one who said that Bal Chevhu. He says that the injured party is considered a Bal Chev, he's a creditor. And it's the money that he's claiming from him. Doesn't have a share in the ownership of the actual ox. He's a Bal Chev, so he pays him what he owes. Now, so the Gemara asks, 1 second. Ema Seifa, let us look at the second half of the Brisa. Kochash, if this ox depreciated in value, Kishas Amada Badin. So the owner gives the injury share a slave according at the time of the trial. So now what comes out? Asan Rabbi Akiva. Here we have the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Omar who said, we learned this yesterday, Shitafininu, that the owners of the two oxen are partners. In other words, the Mazik and the Nizik basically share a share in the shed tam. So Rabbi Shmuel, you're telling me that the first clause is according with Rabbi Shmuel's opinion and the later clause of Rabbi Akiva? My answer is like, no. Kula Rabbi Akiva. It's all in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that they are shutfin. And here, in the case of the sher tam that appreciated in value, we're dealing with a case where keshe pitmai. The reason it appreciated is that the owner fattened it. In other words, though the injury, even though, let's say, according to Rabbi Akiva, the injured party
got with more money.
Yeah. So, but what's the word? But if they're shutfim, so why are you only doing it b'shas hamada? So he says that yes, the injured party is taka shutaf, but he has no share in the appreciation of the value. Why? Because that came from the first guy, and his share is therefore calculated according to the value at the time of the injury, not now. So the Gemara asks, if we're talking about a case where the owner was fat and they stuffed him, same relation. Let's look at the first case of the Brisa. If it appreciated in value and its value stood at 400 dinars, the owner of the tam gives him compensation according to its value at the time of the injury. Now, if this is referring to a case where the owner fattened it, needed to be said that the owner of the tam is not potter from compensation. So Rabbi says, Reisha, the first case of the Brisa is whether he fattened it or whether he appreciated it by value by itself. The shvacha memela neisin lekishas and and it's Tanaf said it's necessary to teach that even in a case where the ox appreciated in value by itself, so the owner of the tam gives him compensation according to the time of the injury. Because he's a shutter, right?
So
Safe.
Why not more than that? If it's only stuff and the balaba and the fruit and the mazik did it is one thing, but if they shoot him.
So let's see. Noch Reisha mishkachas lo b'mei patma petumim b'mei mishvachim emela. B'ishal l'shmin dehech when it came by itself, neis l'kashas and nezek. Now seifa lo mishkachas lo l'kashe pitma. The case of the second brisa with regard to that case where the shir tam appreciated in value, only where the owner fattened it. Okay, so now kochash in the case of the depreciated in value. So we said kishas hamadas badin according to the word at the time of the trial. Kochash machmas mai. So the Gemara asks, due to what did it depreciate? Ilema the kochasha machmas malacha. If the ox depreciated in value due to work for which it was used, so lei malay. So let the person who's chayiv tell him at makachshta. You reduced its value. Va'anoya avina. And I should therefore give you extra compensation. Rashi says the chash machmas makha. It depreciated in value due to the effect of the wound. Amarlei, because the nizak can say to him, karna de teirach kvidal bi. The horn of your ox is buried in it. In other words, it's still losing value due to the wound of the keren. Okay, Zogden Mishnah, new Mishnah. Lamed Dalet, Amen Aleph. Sher Shava Masayim, Shenagach Sher Shava Masayim. You have a Sher Tam worth 200 dinars that gored another ox worth 200 dinars. Okay, so 200 gored now 200. Now what's the problem? The Ein Hanavela Yofa Klum. But the carcass of ox 2 is worth nothing. Ein Hanavela Klum, it's not worth anything. So Amar Meir says, Al Zen Nemar, this is what the Torah means by saying, Umochros Asher Achai, that they should sell the live ox. They should sell this. What happened? The shade, we're talking about over here, a Asher Tam, right? This is the shade which is worth 200 zuz, gored a ox which is worth 200 zuz, and it died. But it's a Asher Tam. So you have to pay Chatzi Nezek. So usually the nevela will be worth something. You could use that to sell. Take, let's say, the nevela of the one who, let's say, of ox number 1 that was worth 200. So offsets the loss. But over here, there's no loss to offset. There's no value there. So the mayor says, this is what the Torah says. Now, what does the full pasuk say? The pasuk says, if an ox gores another ox and it kills it, so then they shall sell the live ox. They should sell, let's say, ox number 1, which killed ox number 2, and divide its monetary value. Which means, so you're going to sell ox number 1, which is worth 200. 100 now goes to ox owner number 2, because that's the damage that he owes him. And the first guy gets 100. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda says to the mayor, v'chein ha'alacha, and that is the halacha. That's the halacha. However, he says the way you're touching on the pasuk is incorrect. Kiyamto mochras asher achai v'chotzos kapedi. Now, the pasuk that says, then they shall sell the live ox and divide its money. So that fits according to your interpretation. What does that mean? In such a case, when they're worth the same value, and share A kills share B. However, he says to him, Rabbi Yehuda says, but you didn't explain it when the pasuk says, and the dead they shall also divide. Since in the case you just mentioned, the nevela is worthless. So how do you taisha v'gama meis yechatzayin? Now, the Eza, so the Mishnah says, rather, to which case is the pasuk referring to? We're talking about in a case where the ox worth 200 dinars. They go to another ox worth 200 dinars. Not that the carcass that got killed is worth nothing; it's worth 50 dinars. So you have a loss of 100, but the carcass is worth 50. So what do? In this case, this party takes half the value of the living one, so he'll take 100 dinars, and half the value of the dead ox, which is 25 dinars. And this party also takes half the value of the living ox and half the value of the dead ox. And that's how you touch up the pasuk. We're talking about that 200 gore 200. The 200 now is dead. The nevela is worth 50, but he has to pay him 100, the chatzi nezek. So what do? So each one, basically, you take half from the nevela, so that's 25, and you take half of the live guy, which is 100. So you have now how much? The nezek was 150.
Because you have 50 from the dead one.
But the nezek was only 100, no?
No, the dead worth 50.
Right.
And you have.
But he only caused the nezek.
It's Messiah.
Yeah.
So
But he only pays chatzi nezek.
Chatzi nezek is 100.
Yes.
But half of it, so they get 100 and a quarter.
And you take 25 from the.
So not the 150. You have 75.
75.
Yeah,
50 from the
25, 50 from the live guy,
dead,
and from the 50 of the dead, you take 25, so 75. Yeah, 75. Yeah, very good. Okay, so now, fine. So it's a back and forth over here. So now the Gemara is going to bring a brisa that this sort of mayor is going to answer with this time.
Why did you leave him take the whole one of the lost baby in the Veda now?
Oh, so the Gemara he's going to go. They're going to go hin and tzedek over here. Okay, Tanah Abana, we learned in our brisa. Shei shava masayim shedagach shei shava masayim. Yeah, an ox worth 200 dinars that gordon ox worth 200 dinars. Ve'anavela yafa 50 mezuzah, and the nevela is worth 50 dinars. So this party takes half the value of the living ox and half the value of the dead ox. And this party also takes half of the value of the living ox and half the value of the dead ox. And this is the case of a sher tam stated in the Torah. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. The Meir says, this is not the case of an ox stated in the Torah. Rather, it's the case of an ox worth 200 dinars, that gordon ox of 200 dinars. The ein hanavela yafa klum. This is like the first case. The carcass is not worth anything. This is what the Torah says. Then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money. So how do I touch up the pasuk and the dead? They shall also divide. It means that the diminished value of the dead ox that was diminished by its death, which means that the diminished value of the dead ox that was diminished by its death is compensated by dividing the value of the live ox between the two parties, while its owners does not receive a share in the carcass of the dead ox. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this. Michti, let us see. Bein Meir, Bein Rabbi Yehuda. Sai according to the Meir and Sai according to Rabbi Yehuda hold that in the case described by Rabbi Yehuda, where the carcass, let's say, is worth 50, Hai Mai Be'esrim V'chamishi Shekel. So this party takes 125, and this one takes 125. So the Gemara says, Hai Mai Be'esrim V'chamishi Shekel Mai B'nayo. So, in other words, the Meir holds that the injured party keeps the carcass, which is worth 50, and he receives another 75 dinars, half the value of the damage, from the sale of the tam. Now, so the owner is thereby left with 125 dinars out of the 200 that it's worth. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the value of both oxen is split between both parties, leaving each one with 125. So if so, the question is, what's the difference between the two tanaim? Why does it matter which way the manner of compensation is calculated? This is what you were asking before. So Rabbi says the practical difference is the difference is with regards to the diminishing value of the carcass. Now, if the carcass now depreciates in value between the ox's death and at the time it's sold, so then the Meir holds that the diminishing value of the carcass is sustained by the injured party. The one chayev for the damage is not responsible for any depreciation in value that occurs after the loss caused by the attack. After it's evaluated. Rabbi Yehuda says no. He holds that the mazik of a palgi. He holds that half of the diminishing value of the carcass is sustained by the person who is chayev for the damage, since he receives half of the dead of the ox. Some of the Abayas says imkein matzin Rabbi Yehuda. If so, it comes out according to Rabbi Yehuda that tam it comes out in a case that a tam that causes damage is more stringent than a case of a mu'id. Since according to all shittas, in a case where a mu'id ox kills another ox, the carcass belongs exclusively to who? The injured party. And he sustains any subsequent decrease in its value. If you're going to say indeed, Rabbi Yehuda holds that the halacha with regards to that tam, ox, is more chomer than with regards to a mu'id, because the tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says tam chayiv umu'id pater. Rabbi Yehuda says if a shamer did not guard an ox properly and escaped and it caused damage, so if it was a tam, he's chayiv, and a mu'id is pater, and if the mu'id is pater. So now he says, maybe Rabbi Yehuda said this in regards to the case of Shemitah, which is more stricter. It's a pasuk. In regards to compensation, did you ever hear such an opinion? Well, Tanya, on the contrary, we learned in a brayso Rabbi Yehuda says, you would have thought that in the case of an ox worth 100 dinars, that gored an ox worth 5 selah, which is 20 dinars, and the carcass was worth 1 selah, 4 dinars. So the halacha is that this party takes half the living ox and half the dead ox. And this one takes half the living ox, and this one takes half the dead ox. So accordingly, the injured party receives 252 dinars in value, which is much more than the ox was worth before it was killed. So instead, Rabbi Yehuda says, Amris, you could say like this: for what purpose is in the case of a mu'id singled out by this halacha? Is this to make it more stringent or to make it more lenient? You would say that it's to make it more stricter. And therefore, in the case of a mu'id, its owner pays only the value of what it damaged and no more. So in the case of a tam, which is more lenient, all the more so is it not clear that the owner is not chayiv to pay more than the value of the damage. Rabbi Yehuda does not allow for chiyuv in the case of a tam to be more stringent than the case of a mu'id. We have a clear raya. Rabbi Yechon says, Shevach nevela ikbenayu. The practical difference between them is in regards to the appreciation of the carcass and value after the ox's death. The Mar Sovar the Nizikava. The mayor holds that the carcass belongs to the injured party. Mar Sovar, and Rabbi Yehuda will hold that Palga holds that half of the increased value belongs to the injured party and half goes to the one liable for the damage. And this explains what was difficult to Rabbi Yehuda in another brisa. Now that you say that the Torah has mercy on the person who's chayav for damage, the shakal b'shvacha, as he takes a share of the increased value of the carcass, can it be that in the case of an ox worth 5 selah, in other words 20 dinars, again that skip. So could it be in the case that the ox was worth 5 selah, 20 dinars, that Gordon ox worth 100 dinars, and the carcass is worth 50 dinars?
Give it half and half. No, it doesn't make sense.
So Zanedel Chatzi Achai v'Chatzi Ameis v'Zanedel Chatzi Achai v'Ameis. Does it make sense that half this party takes half the ox and this one takes half the dead ox? Doesn't make sense. The owner of the tam ox receives 35 dinars in value, which is much more than the ox was worth. What are you saying, though?
Selling the live.
Yeah. So my Omer. So the Gemara asks, what does it mean? And it says, you would say that this applies only if there's a loss sustained by the nizik. But when there's no loss by the nizik, again, for example, let's say a share which is 5 shlaim, and it was worth 30, so I have to start bringing tissue. Thank you. In that case, the one chayev for damage also takes the share of the increased value. Why? Because since the injured party ends up not having sustained any financial loss, as he receives a share of 10 dinars in the case of the share tam, and another 15 in the case of the nevela. So he really gains 5 value of the ox. Now, so Rabbi Yehuda says, what does the pasuk say? Shalim yishalim, he shall pay, which is mashman ba'alim mishalmim, that the owner of the share tam pays, and the owner does not take more than the amount his animal is worth at the time of the damage. Rabbi says, you find that the tam pays more than chatzi nezek. And Vatera says, only half. So the Gemara Rabbi answers, Isla Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi holds that he holds that only the diminished value of the dead ox that was diminished by his death, is compensated by dividing the live ox between the two parties. In other words, the chiyuv, the person who's chayiv never pays more than half the damage. Minole, from where does Rabbi Yehuda know this? Is it from the pasuk and the carcass they shall also divide? But he said, Rabbi Yehuda says, and this party takes half the value of the live ox, and he takes half the value of the live ox. If so, let the Torah say SMAs, my begam. So it must be shamas mina tarti. I'm learning these two things: that the carcass is also divided between the two parties, and that the liable party is never required to pay more than half the damage. Yos, to stop it. go there, stop recording.
Oy, 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 oy.